Okay, good afternoon. So I think yesterday we had done, I think we were doing polity, right? Sorry, not polity, Plato. So we were discussing about important key ideas of Plato. I think we solved few questions on Plato as well. So I think one of the last question what we solved on Plato was that what is the relation between his idea of education and his idea of justice. So now looking at other areas where the probable question can come or will come, or which has been not asked till now, a probable question that can come. So take down the question and we have to try to write the answer to this one. So take down the question as compare and contrast. Compare and contrast Plato's and Rawls' idea of justice. Compare and contrast Plato and Rawls' idea of justice. And this is for how many marks? 10 marks. And you have to write within 150 words. So basically first you write. I'll give you 7 minutes time. Then I'll tell you that what can be written. Okay, so your time starts now. You have 7 minutes to write your answer. Because yesterday we have discussed what is Plato's idea of justice. Okay, but if you know what is Rawls' idea of justice, you need to compare and write. For even the online students, you have to write it within 7 minutes. So the question is comparison between Plato's idea of justice and Rawls' idea of justice. So last 3 minutes. Last 2 minutes. Last 60 seconds. Last 10 seconds. Time is up. So obviously this was a question what you had to write within 7 minutes in that regard, a 10 marker question. So again, as I said, now what is UPSC trying to do is that they're making more it applied. For example, now you would have read only Plato. There is also concept of justice. They can mix Plato and justice and say that you compare and contrast. So as I told, unless you have not prepared, you have just read, you're getting a point. Why many people don't do well is that they mainly think what we just read a notes from notes, I learn political science and I'll go write the exam. That is what general understanding. So examination is not about the notes. The examination is more about developing examination skills. Okay, so like how many of you are able to complete the answer? To an extent. How many of you are not able to complete the answer? Simple. Why? Because unless you have not revised, you have not logically read. Mere reading will not help. So you get a point. So like you read 80-page notes for Plato, but end of the day you are not able to write 150 words in the exam. Why? Because there is no understanding. So obviously when we write this answer, compare and contrast Plato's idea of justice with Rawlsian idea of justice. So what is the introduction that you can write? So I would have written my introduction as something like justice is an architectonic principle in the study of political science. I would have written what? Justice is an architectonic principle in the study of political science. Now how I know? Because I would have prepared my introduction beforehand. If there is a question on justice, this is what I would write. Now, since it's a 10 marker question, I can't describe everything in brief. I have to be very concise. So first I am going to write the similarities in both of them in the idea of justice. So you can say in both Plato and Rawls, they attempted to build a universal theory of justice. In both Plato and Rawls, there is normative element of what we can say justice. They speak about normative aspects of justice. But however, there are a lot of differences also. One, I write, Plato describes justice as natural and it is endowed in human mind, and he says it is not a contract. Whereas we look at the Rawls, the core component of Rawls' idea of justice is based on a social contract. Second difference, what we can observe between Plato and Rawls, Plato's idea of justice is based on functional specialization, where each individual should perform his duties. Whereas in Rawls' idea of justice, it happens under wheel of ignorance, where people are not conscious of their identities. Third, right, in Plato, his idea of justice is based on building a meritocratic society, and where his idea of justice envisages the principle that equality is not a natural principle. Whereas in Rawls, he does speak about the idea of what? Affirmative action, where discrimination only can be justified in terms of what? When it is favoring the vulnerable sections of the society. So we can say that they belong to different time periods. Their justice also reflected the ideas prevalent in their time periods. But nevertheless, both the ideas of justice are considered to be utopian, or you can say it is more idealistic. Because in Rawls is idealistic, it is not accepted for the practical or the real world. So that is what you can write as an answer with respect to what. So voice is good. So is it audible now for the online students? Okay. So basically these are the points what you can write as what? The compare and contrast Rawls' idea and Plato's idea of justice. So again, I tell now, to write in 7 minutes in these kind of questions, you should have done a lot of brainstorming beforehand. Why majority of the students are not able to do it? They have just read. They have not analyzed. They have not taught what? Reflections. What is reflections? Comparisons. When there is a difference between reading and there is a difference between understanding. Right? So what happens, 80% of the people, if you see in the market, they just read one notes and they say, okay, fine, notes is very good. Reading notes alone will not get you 300. You're in the market material, just read notes, go directly write the exam, you'll get off 290. Who's got that like the 290? It's those people who know how to make use of those notes. Those people who know, okay, how to come. When you might get decent score, how the questions will come, how it is given in the notes. These are all new themed question. New themed ones, so it is not there in the notes. In the notes, what is there? Rawls is there. In the notes, what is there? Plato's idea of justice is there. There is nothing called as compare and contrast. What is compare and contrast? You should have thought about it. Okay, what is the similarity? What is the dissimilarities? Because justice is also what we call as a dynamic concept. Justice has evolved from times of Plato to times of Rawls. Got the point? So this is how we will approach the question called as what? Compare and contrast Rawls and Plato's idea of justice. If it's a 15 marker, I will explain a bit his books, what he have written, etc., etc. Add up that to just increase my content. But the crux of the content, I have to address the demand. What is compare? This contrast. So I have to write both. What are the similarities in their ideas, and what are the divergence in their ideas? So that is what this question was. So here we can't categorize this question whether this question come under Western political thought or it comes under concept of justice. It comes both. You cannot tell this is a question on Plato, or you can tell is this a question on justice. It can be both. So obviously what they are looking for that you need to bring your collective understanding on the paper, not just the information what you possess. So that's why we keep saying why many students struggle to score, because they are just reproducing information on the paper. They are not producing any kind of analysis, thinking, originality of their ideas into the paper, and that is why you can't score like very high marks, or your score would have become stagnant. It's not scoring beyond certain extent. Understand? So when you revise it 10 times, if you just revise 10 times Plato, revise 10 times Rawls, still you are in the same place. Because you revised only Plato, you revised only Rawls. Have you made any kind of analysis that how this idea of justice is different? Alright. So this is one what we can say, not a previous year question, a probable question that might appear in the exam. So if you look at most of the other questions on Plato, which you can logically, I think, address. There is one more question which has been already asked in previous year. So this you don't need to write. You can just discuss like that. So they've explained Plato's communism. Explain Plato's communism. And they've told it, compare it with modern day communism. So this was a previous year UPSC question marks. It was asked in 2003 or something like that. So let us think we asked it for 20 marks. So basically it is again, if you look at a pretty straightforward question, which I'll be able to answer pretty easily. So one is that first part of the question is clear cut. They just want me to explain Plato's communism. So first I'll introduce about Plato, write about his works, and I would say what was Plato's main concern, that he wanted to free Athens from corruption, nepotism, etc. And obviously one of the core idea he gave for that is communism. So I'll go on to explain here what is communism of wives, communism of property. Then also have to give reasons why he's speaking about communism of wives, because he says that family is one of the weaknesses of men. That is nepotism. He says is the root cause of corruption, and that is why private ownership of property also leads to what? People acquiring wealth for their future generations. And that is why he says that both have to be removed. In a sense, his summary of his idea that one who has political power should not have any kind of economic power, because these are leading to vulnerability of the individual or the ruler. That is what he spoke about, why he gave the idea of communism. That I need to explain. It's not exactly how it is in my notes. I will explain in my words why did he give this idea, what is the significance of this idea. Then I'll come to the second part of the question, because they're only asking explain Plato's communism. They're not asking analyze Plato's communism. So I don't need to go into critique. I just need to explain. But there is a second part of the question also. They're telling with compare with modern day communism. So here first of all I need to write a connecting paragraph where I have to tell modern day communism is what we call as the Marxian communism, which was reflected by Karl Marx in his work which he co-authored with Engels in Communist Manifesto. And it arose as a retaliation against capitalism, or it emerged as a critic of capitalism. And you can say, however, though both are related to communism, yet they are separated with time as well as ideas. So one, I am going to write what is the difference. So one, I am going to write in Plato's communism, it is also called as half communism, because you can say it is not applied to the entire society, it is only applied to the soldier class and the guardian class. Whereas Marxist communism, it largely applies to the entire society. In Plato's idea of communism, the society was divided into three classes based on their aptitude. Whereas in Marxian communism, he is dividing the society into two classes based on who controls or who owns the mode of production. Thirdly, Plato's communism is also applied to family. It involves in personal aspects of individuals, whereas Marxian communism only spoke about what? Removing private property, but he never spoke about personal lives, or he did not apply communism lives, or that those ideas were not there with the modern day communism. And fourth one, you can say Plato's communism, the ultimate goal of Plato's communism is to create an ideal state. And in Plato's angle, state is supreme, state is natural. But in terms of Marx, the ultimate goal of Marx communism was to create a stateless and a classless society. So in a way, for Marx, communism was the end. For Plato, communism was the means to create his ideal state. And the other difference, what you can say, so for Plato, he based his idea of communism, or his idea of communism is largely based on idealism. But for Marx, or the modern day communism, it is based on what? Materialism. So these are significant differences between what? Modern day communism and Plato's communism. So my conclusion, I am going to write my conclusion as what? So one should not compare Plato and modern communism, because they are premised on different time periods and different social conditions. Hence, we can say that we are comparing the uncomparable. We are comparing the uncomparables. This is what I write as my conclusion. So understood? How do we approach the question of what is say introduction? You can write as communism is an idea that has been prevalent from the times of ancient Greece even to modern times. Then you can go to say that we can see that Plato gave his idea of communism in his book Republic, whereas Marx spoke about his idea of communism in his book Communist Manifesto. See, introduction and conclusion is an art. Some people will struggle with it. Why struggle with it? Because they are not expressive enough, they are not articulative enough, or they have not sufficiently practiced. Some people will be very good in it. Why? Because of their articulation skills, or because of that they have practiced a lot, or they would have thought about it a lot. And social science is such a subject, there is nothing called this is the answer. You can write any way you want, or you can bring any points, what do you feel, okay, this is also a difference. Ultimately, what an evaluator will look for? Three things. Content. Is it relevant? Second one, has the candidate understood the demand of the question? Third, how has he articulated it? Is it organically written? So what happens is that any notes you read, any notes in the market or in whole of India, textbook, notes, etc. End of the day, your paper will be judged based on what you have written. So what you have written is always based on how you understood the concepts. So some people, what they would have done, they would not understood, they would have just by hearted. So what is by heart? There was one student, what we had some 3 years back. So that fellow, he came and he told, look, I can't join classes, but I've read these market notes. I'm understanding pretty good. I might write few answers, can you look at it? So one day I had brought Aristotle question. He wrote, one who lives outside, he had written, one who lives outside the state is goat or beast. Asked him like, what is meaning of it? No sir, that is how it is written in notes. Okay, let us think that is not what it is written in notes. It is God or beast. The person who has written the notes, his handwriting is such that this fellow for goat it has appeared, God has appeared like goat. So problem is not that, the problem is that how this fellow has read it. Means he has not understood the concept itself. If somebody reads it, if they have understood, they would have told why it is goat or beast, or what is the link, what is the explanation of that statement. That is called as what? Blind study, unstructured study. Why that happens is that because when you don't have guidance or when you don't know how to say. So I'm not saying everybody needs guidance. Some people are naturally capable, or some people come from political science background. But here what happens, some people what they think, just we read notes, that is sufficient, I'll go write in the exam. Reading notes is only for content building. Writing the exam is a different skill altogether. And that is what happens, that end goal is what you have to see is that whether you are studying well or not. End goal, are you getting marks or not. So obviously what happens in questions will come like this. People are confused how to structure. People are confused because first to write a good answer, you need to have clarity of what is the question. Simple, question has 2 parts. First part, you explain Plato's communism. So that's why I didn't start my introduction with Plato and Marx. I started in my introduction only with Plato. Second part of the question is what they're asking you once you have explained this. Now you compare with modern day communism. So in my second part of my answer, I will write about when did modern day communism come about? What is modern day communism? Whose idea was it? Then I'll go into explaining what? Okay, how these 2 ideas are different. Then I'm going to conclude my answer saying that, okay, these 2 people belong to different time periods. They've given these ideas in different social conditions. So comparing what we are comparing the uncomparables. So that time what you would have done, you would have written very effectively. You have addressed all the parts of the question. So that's why I told in notes also, even when you read one's notes, it should be a crisp. Next time you should have made a short notes. Dialogues, key ideas, keywords, what is your understanding? Understood how to write this particular question? So online students, any doubt here? Voice is still breaking. So is the voice still breaking or is it audible now? For the online student, is it audible or still the voice, there is an issue? Okay, Anshal says that, what you can say, one more point what you can add is that in Marx's idea of communism, it is based on revolution. Means unless you bring a revolution or a radical change. But if you look at Plato's idea of communism, it is based on status quo. Okay, he does not speak about any kind of violence in his idea to bring or establish communism. His idea of communism is largely based on reason, whereas Marx's idea of communism, it is based on what? Violence, because Marx says that violence is the midwife of revolution. So that is also a good point that can be answered. Now these are largely what the questions have come on Plato. Okay, or if you want, I'm not solving all questions, only those probable questions that can be important. One more question is there: for no law or ordinance is mightier than the knowledge of the philosopher king, and they've asked you to comment. So let us think, this is a question on Plato's views on laws. What is the question? No laws or ordinance is mightier than what? The knowledge of whom? Knowledge of philosopher king. And they are asking you to what? Comment. So let us take 15 marks. What they would have given. So here the key term is comment. Comment means not just explaining it, I also have to bring my reflections on it. But first step is always, if I take this as the thesis, or this is the argument, I need to explain the argument. So obviously in my answer I am going to start with who said it, what is the context. So basically link Plato, mention about his work, and say that Plato gave the idea of what? Establishing a rule of philosopher king. And he said that all the powers should be given to the philosopher king. So he said the philosopher king is a person who is highly knowledgeable. So he says that when you have given the power to such a person, you should not limit him by bringing laws, because what he defined laws as collective wisdom. He told laws are inflexible. He told laws will act as laws cannot be equated to the knowledge what the philosopher king has, and that is why he gives the corollary of how you cannot limit an expert medical practitioner to the book of medicine. Similarly, a philosopher king should not be limited by laws. A philosopher king is above the laws, because philosopher king is a person who has true knowledge. Once a person has true knowledge, he will not run behind material things, and that is why he will always, he's basing his faith on philosopher king's knowledge, say that he will always take the right decision, and he will also use his knowledge to take decisions in emergency situations, whereas a law cannot be changed in emergency situation. For example, the law in what you can say before Nirbhaya case, the law could not be immediately changed. So this is what Plato's argument. That is why he is arguing that what? No law or ordinance is mightier than the knowledge of philosophy. Now once I have explained my argument part for Plato's viewpoint, because I am explained in my answer whose viewpoint? Plato's viewpoint. What I am explaining, why he is saying that, I am explaining. Some people will not see. Some people what they do, they'll just tell opinions. Okay, this fellow is telling that, that fellow is telling this. Why did he tell? Why did he say knowledge, law is inferior to knowledge of the philosopher? That you need to explain, right? That many people don't explain the why part. You have to tell law is inflexible. Law represents average wisdom, because this fellow has super knowledge. Law will limit the powers of the philosopher king. He wants to give a free hand to the philosopher king. Why? Because he says unless kings become philosophers or philosophers become kings, the world will not rest from its evils. But I am going to bring the critic. However, Aristotle criticizes Plato on the notion that any day collective wisdom is better than the wisdom of one supreme person. That is one point. Second point, what I am going to bring an argument. There is also contradiction in what Plato is saying. Because Plato in his theory of soul, he told even the most rational person, reasonable person has an element of appetite. So how can we trust one person with complete powers and place him above law? Third point I am going to write, that human history has always shown that when one individual has been given complete power, as we say, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts a person absolutely. Hence, Plato's idea is impractical. It is not based on sound philosophy. And this was also admitted by a mature Plato when he wrote his second work, Laws, where he did bring the philosopher king also under the law. Hence, we can say what many say, that Aristotle's best state is Plato's second best state. How do we articulate or how do we write answer for this particular question? So they're saying that voice is breaking again. So give me 2 minutes. I'll ask them to make a check. No, voice break ಆಗ್ತಾ voice ತಿರ್ಗಾ break ಆಗ್ತಾ. Is it audible now? Is the voice clear now? Praveen Anchal. You reading better. For the online students, is it the voice is now? Is it clear or still is there a break? Okay. Understood about how to go about. So these are the questions largely on Plato that can be asked, or how can we approach. So that's why I said, whether you have read 80 pages, whether you have read 30 pages, whether you have read 20 pages, all it matters is that how you have understood the concept. Get a point? So end of the day, what pitches much is that how do we write an answer. So any writing of the answer is based on our understanding of the particular subject. Get a point? So what some people they will do is that they won't read. Most of the times what they will do is just written notes. There's a difference between just writing notes and developing thinking abilities. right? So what happens even if you take in our GS classes in that regard, when polity, I'll dictate notes. Why we dictate notes in polity? Because many students, they want dictation. Why dictation? Because they just feel that, they're understanding. That's not understanding. It's about you understanding the concept, you understanding the ideas, you discussing many ideas. Only through that will become good in a particular topic. Otherwise, it will be more like that. You have a notes, you have read something, okay, in answer, you're not able to write any answer. So when you will be only able to write an answer, if they ask, okay, who is a philosopher? But they won't ask like that. The questions will come more applied. Now, same way, the second thinker who is there is Aristotle. So here again the question is that how one should have been prepared by now is that, like how one should have prepared by now is that, whether what you have read, which notes you have referred, no, I have to have everything in 2 pages ready if I'm going to write a mains. So obviously one key point I'll always remember is the book what Aristotle has written, because this is something which I'll be utilizing in my answer, politics. Then I have to know about key ideas of Aristotle, or key things what I can Aristotle. So I remember that Aristotle is what? Father of political science. I'll also try to remember what is the methodology that Aristotle would have employed or used. His approach, you can say that it is both normative as well as empirical. When compared to Plato, Aristotle is more practical. He is not lost in the world of ideas. He is speaking of present world. Then we can say the main crux of his work, politics, the main idea of his work, politics, what is the central idea of his work, politics, is to find what is a practical functional state. That is the core idea, what we can think of Aristotle. So in order to identify what is his practical functional state, unlike Plato with his world of ideas, he is more practical in his approach. It also reflects his background, right? Because Plato was unmarried, but Aristotle was married, had a stable life. That also influenced his ideas. So one you can know about, or you have to know about Aristotle's theory of slavery. So one other thing you have to know is that Aristotle's theory of citizenship. Aristotle's classification of constitution. Then you have to know Aristotle's idea of justice. Aristotle's view on property. This is a minor component. No question has been asked, but still you have to know. And you have to know Aristotle's view on what is causes of revolution. So he speaks about general causes, particular causes, and he also gives solutions that how to stop revolution. So these are what you can say fundamental ideas what you can read from a book about Aristotle. Any notes, any book what you read, largely you find contents related. And as I told, in each of them we'll solve question or we'll look into it. But again, as I told, I won't be teaching you again what is theory of slavery, etc. based on the assumption that you know it. At least you know something about theory of slavery. So for example, he says from hour of birth, some are born to rule, others are born to serve. He defended slavery. On what grounds he defended slavery? He told slavery is natural. Because again, Greek political thought or Greeks did not believe that equality is a natural principle of human society. Second one, on the grounds of utilitarianism. It benefits both the slave and the master. Because master can focus on his public affairs. Because for Aristotle, he was an advocate of civic republicanism. Means he wanted people to participate in public affairs. Slaves, on what basis he identify who is a slave or a master? Based on reason, who has reason or not. And you can also see that Aristotle was more conservative than Plato when it came to women's participation in politics, because he denied, means it's very easy to understand his idea of citizenship by basing on who he does not include. So he's denied women, he's denied children, he's denied old age, he's denied slaves. And he gives own reasons like women should focus on domestic duties, slaves lack reason, children lack maturity, old people lack health. So that is why he says his idea of citizenship is more participation. If you are participating in the political system, then you are a citizen. Then he studied 158 constitutions in the world, and because at that point of time the word constitution, state, government, everything meant the same, because we are not living in an era of nation state. That time it was only city states. So there he classifies the constitution based on two things. One, on the basis of whether it is the number of rulers and whether it is a good form of government or a perverted form of government. So you can keep in the regard, okay, this shortcut map: monarchy, aristocracy, polity. Here you can keep it as taught: tyranny, oligarchy, and democracy. He has categorized democracy as a, what you can say, perverted form of government. For him, democracy is the rule of power. So among all these type of governments, he considers polity is the best and the practical form of government. So how he is basing his studies? He is not basing his studies on metaphysical studies. He is basing his studies on what he has observed, what he has seen during his time. That is why we say Aristotle uses empirical method to explain things. It is not completely normative. So obviously he says that polity is a middle path between aristocracy and democracy, because it is a rule of middle class, the golden mean rule. He says rich are very arrogant, they don't follow the law. Poor do not have the art of ruling, they don't know how to rule, they only like to be ruled, they are masses, like what Robert Mitchell said, slavish, indolent, etc. So both the rich and poor will always trust the middle class. So Aristotle always, a society which has middle class will be more stable. So he told polity will have both elements of aristocracy and democracy, and that for him is the most practical form of government. An Aristotelian ideal state also believed in the idea of rule of law. For him, law was above everybody. Even the ruler should be minded by law, because he, unlike Plato, was not a radical. He didn't have faith on goodness of humans. He always believed in constitutionalism. They believed there should be a rule. And then you can also say that for his ideal state, rulers should have reason. Even he stressed on education. All ideas are logically connected. Okay, so he says that what is more functional? Masters, that is what those who have reason, they have to participate in public affairs. That is what he called as civic republicanism. So you can see influence of Aristotle on Hannah Arendt, because many people have been influenced by Aristotle. And then you can say he also spoke about why do revolutions happen, why there is political instabilities. That is why some also consider him as what? The father of comparative politics. Because he has compared different political systems at that point of time. So what his analysis shows that for him, you need to understand what is revolution. Revolution, we are not speaking in Marxian sense. For Aristotle, even a small change in the constitution represents revolution. So obviously he says there are general causes for revolution. There are particular causes for revolution. Again, you don't need to go in detail. Like if you know briefly, like in monarchy, it is the jealousy among the other family members. In an aristocracy, another group of aristocrats, they'll be always looking to remove them from, they will push for revolution. Because people can be easily manipulated. Or you can say maybe in countries like democracy, increasing inequality can be a root cause of revolution. Then he gives general causes. What is general causes? One, if there is increasing corruption in the government, people will revolt. Or second one, if the power is not equally distributed, because even though he says that inequality is natural, but still he says humans always have this emotion that they have to be treated equally. So when they see that some people are getting all the privileges, they rise in revolt. For example, if you take Syria, why in Syria revolution happened? Because Bashar al-Assad government kept all the public position privileges with the Shia community. They didn't share it with Sunnis. Economic inequality can be a root cause of revolution. Why? Because end of the day it creates enemy. So obviously what will happen if rich becomes small, poor becomes large. Obviously poor will rotate. That's why he says middle path, middle class should be there. So you can take example of Arab Spring, you can take example of in America today what is happening, Occupy Wall Street movement. Why? Because increasing inequality. And he also says that what the wealth or whatever you win in the wars, that should be equally distributed among the members of the society. So he says these are general what leads to a revolution. Hence the prescription is what? Try to at least create the perception of equality. Try to bring at least public distribution of different sections, of bring them into administration. Make sure that inequality does not increase beyond certain extent. Take harsh measure against those who are corrupt officers. These are general recommendations, what Aristotle told that a ruler can do to contain revolution. So broadly, if you read Aristotle, these are the major things you can remember. So his idea of justice, he speaks three ideas of justice: retributive, distributive, commutative. He is not speaking like Plato sense, functional, special. He is more practical. Distribution, who should get what? Retributive, punishments. Commutative, exchange of goods. So one of his defense of slavery was also based on economic reasons, because that time slavery was important part of the Greek economy. Without slavery, economy did not function. That is why he also defended slavery on the grounds of expectancy. What I explained is all Aristotle's viewpoint. It does not mean all his views are correct, or it does not mean all his views don't have any contradiction. So in exam when they ask, I'll have to be able to articulate based on comment. Comment means, okay, what do my reflections on his ideas? Even so, that's what I told. Whether you have read 100 pages of Aristotle, whether you read 20 pages of Aristotle, or you have read only 10 pages of Aristotle, it doesn't matter. It matters that what you have understood. Yeah, initial reading should be comprehensive. Why? Because now what I am telling is a summary. Because initially when I would have read 100 pages, but then I would have summarized it. I would have understood it based on what? Previous year questions. So this is what you need to have an understanding of what? To write a good answer, or some quotes from our of worth, some are born to rule, some are born to serve. Inequality is the root cause of revolution everywhere. Polis is the best practical state. Property and family are time-tested institutions. And largely, yeah, his view on state. That is one part I think we didn't cover. His views on state. One I told what kind of state, but what was his views or origin of state? That is where he said, state comes for sake of life, and it continues for the sake of good life. This is one quote that is related to state. The other quote, what he says is that state is the highest of all associations. The other quote related to state is that one who lives outside his state is either God or what? Beast. So when you would have read, you should have known all this. Okay, why he is telling either God? God is perfect. Beast does not have reason. So only when you live under the state, you develop reason. You can lead a more civilized life. So here beasts can be also referred to as barbarians. So for Aristotle, state is natural, state is an ethical institution, state is a reflection of perfection. It is only under the state you can achieve your highest self actualization. So why is studying state is highest of all associations? There are other associations also. Family. Family will have a very primitive role of satisfying your biological needs. Even animals will have family. You have society or what you call as village. It will satisfy your social needs. But it is only under the state where you achieve self actualization. Be at your best. So for Aristotle, he is a strong proponent of what we call as the organic theory of state. Why? Because you can say end of the day he was a student of Plato. This is what you can know about state. But now let us look into questions. Again, knowing one thing is different, how to answer is another thing. So take down one question. Take down this question and I'll give you 12 minutes to write because it's a 20 marker question. Explain Aristotelian view of politics. View of politics. To what extent do you think it has contributed to modern day constitutional democracies? Modern day constitutional democracies. This was asked in 2021 and it was asked for 20 marks in the exam. Okay. So these are 20 marker questions. So you'll get 12 minutes time to write your answer. So your time starts now. Given you the question, you have 12 minutes time. You have to write it within 12 minutes. Last 7 minutes. Last 6 minutes. Last 5 minutes. Last 3 minutes. Last 2 minutes. Last 60 seconds. Time up. So obviously here, if we come to the question, we look into the question what they've asked. One simple thing, first part of the question is that they're asking us to explain what? Aristotle's view on politics. So obviously introduction and all is sorted out. You can read Aristotle is the father of political science. He's written a book called as Politics, which is considered as important treatise written on politics in the Western political thought. The point is that how do I explain Aristotle's view of politics, or according to Aristotle, what is politics? 10 simple and to just summarize his theories. One, for him, for his idea of politics, he was a firm believer in what? That polity is the best practical form of state. His idea of politics is that what? Where people will have to directly participate in public affairs. He promoted civic republicanism. Third, his idea of politics that what? He told rule of law should be there. Any day that is better. What is that? It represents collective wisdom, better than wisdom of any one particular person. His idea of politics where he told only those who have reason should be allowed to participate, others should be kept out. For that is where he kept out slaves outside the purview of his particular state. So largely this is what we can say Aristotle viewed politics as, or his views on politics. So his theory on revolution, his theory on citizenship, his views on what is that, comparison, gives us an understanding of what is politics according to. So that is the first part of the question what you would have written. Now second part of the question, they're asking your opinion or your analysis, saying that to what extent, the keyword is to what extent do you think it has contributed, means what you have written in the first paragraph, they're asking how to extent that has contributed to the modern day constitutional democracy. So I would write, or my answer would say that, Aristotle is considered by some as what? One of the forerunners of the modern day constitutionalism. Now I need to explain how. I would say, for example, when Aristotle stressed on rule of law, this is a, what you can say, important feature of modern day democracies. Second one, Aristotle also spoke about the idea of citizenship. So even you can say in modern day constitutional democracies, we can say rights are given largely to citizens. And third, you can say Aristotle stressed on importance of reason, education. So you can say in modern day constitutional democracies, they gave a lot of significance to what? Deliberations, discussions, debates. But nevertheless, I would argue, one cannot agree that all Aristotle ideas have contributed or part of modern day constitutional democracy. There are some of his ideas which are incompatible with the idea of modern day constitutional government. For example, his defense of slavery in that regard, it cannot be attributed as a feature of modern day constitutional democracies, because modern day constitutional democracies are based on the idea of equality among men, irrespective of their social background. Second aspect, he excluded women from participating in politics. So he brought a sexual division of labor. But when we look at the modern day constitutional democracies, they believe that what? Women have equal political rights compared to what? Men. Or third, point what we can say that his idea of citizenship was based on exclusionary principles. But in a modern day idea of constitutions, citizenship is largely determined based on birth. For example, in Indian constitution, everybody are a citizen if they are born in this particular country to Indian parents. So hence, one cannot agree that all ideas, but definitely we can say Aristotle plays a key role in emergence of what the ideas of modern day constitutionalism, which has been taken forward by scholars such as John Locke, J.S. Mill, Hannah Arendt, who have been influenced by his ideas. Hence, Aristotle continues to be remembered as what? The father of political science. So this is how I would have written my answer. Why am I saying I would have written it? Because end of the day, it's one person's opinion. Because they're asking, what do you think? Another person might write pretty differently, saying that no, Asampaisan is perfectly the modern day constitutional thing. But I would take more of a balanced stand. So I would write half of the answer where I do find similarities or how Aristotelian ideas are reflected in modern day constitutional democracies. And more importantly, first of all, you have to know what is a modern day constitutional democracy. So that's why I told, again, what you see the UPSC trend, mixing concepts. So you have a topic called as democracy. There you would have read about modern day constitutional democracy. Similarly, a topic called as Aristotle. So what is the increasing trend what UPSC is doing? They are intermixing concepts. They want the student not to be a bookworm. They don't want a student just to be a rote learner, just vomit in the exam, whatever it is there in his notes. He wants to test whether this fellow has a good understanding. So now let us think somebody will tell, I'll read Aristotle, but I won't read democracy topic. I will choose. Still you can't write a very good question, because if you don't know what is the features of modern day constitutional democracy. Got an idea that how you write this answer, how do you approach this question? And that is why we see that especially people from our state, why they are not so good or excellent in that regard, because they would have not read that way, they would have not got that kind of exposure. Because the reason is simple, you can see here, people are not so analytical. People don't prepare in an analytical way. Their only main thing is that, okay, I'll read one notes and I'm going to write that in exam, I'll get off marks. The preparation should be at preparation stage itself. Okay, so here we are mixing two different things. One, features of modern day constitutional democracy. Second, we are comparing it. To what extent Aristotle ideas have made. So that is why you see there's a logical connection between the two questions they've asked. First question they've asked, what is these ideas on politics? Second question is, to what extent these ideas have influenced modern day constitutional democracy. I can only tell it if I know what are the features of modern day constitutional democracy. So India is a modern day constitutional democracy. If I think about India only, I'll get few ideas. Got the point? How to approach this particular question. So same way, let us take now one probable question that can come in the exam. Means the question which has been not yet asked, but let us say if they go on to ask. Okay. So let us think if they ask a question in a way, they might ask, do you think Aristotle as the Peter who defied his master. Do you think Aristotle as the Peter has defied his master? Let us say they asked comment and they asked you for 15 marks. So what will be my structuring of the question? What is the demand of the question, or how one should approach this question? That's why I told this is a probable question which is not asked. But let us say in exam some question came like this. Same note, same content, everything. There's nothing new. So I can't keep searching it where they have written about this. So when we break down the question, what is the understanding the question has? Simple. Question is largely asking relation between Plato and Aristotle. Simple, na? Let it be anything, defined master, etc. Relation between Plato and Aristotle. So here their opinion they are asking is that, do you think Aristotle defied his master? So here, first part of my answer, I am going to explain that part, that why there is a sense that he is a person who has defied the master. So I am going to write about how Aristotle critiqued many of Plato's ideas. So to start my answer, I would say that the entire Western political thought is considered as footnotes of Plato and Aristotle. Simple introduction. Then I am going to say that Aristotle was one of the staunch critic of his master Plato's idea. He was a staunch critic of Plato's idealism. Then I want to explain what was his critics. One, he criticized that the philosopher king only lived in the world of ideas, it was not practical. Second one, he criticized the idea of communism and wives and property, because he said that what both private property and family are time-tested institutions. They are very essential for progress of human society. Second critic. Third critic, he believed that no person can be above the law. So he criticized Plato's notion that when he said no law or ordinance is mightier than the knowledge of a philosopher king. For Aristotle, any day law represents collective wisdom, which was better than the wisdom of one particular person. This would be suffice to bring the how he is defined. But at the same time, one cannot deny that Aristotle has not rejected all Platonian ideas. Some consider Aristotle as one of the greatest Platonists. So we can say one of the biggest influence on Aristotle was Plato. Plato's ideas are reflected in Aristotle's writing. I have to give explanation or examples how. So one, you can say Aristotle also, like Plato, categorized democracy as a perverted form of government, never considered as an ideal form of government. Plato, like Aristotle, also believed that politics or public affairs should be always managed by those who are educated. Even in his scheme of things, education plays a very key role. Third, like Plato, even Aristotle never divorced politics and ethics. He believed that politics and ethics go hand in hand. Or like Plato, you can see even Aristotle stresses a lot on dialectics or dialogue, debate, discussion as a core aspect of arriving at the truth. So hence one can say that though he rejected certain ideas of Plato, still, as we say, the shadow of his master never faded from his mind. And the relation between Aristotle and Plato was such that even Plato received Aristotle's critique in a positive way, and that is when he renewed certain of his ideas and he wrote the other works called as the Laws and the Statements. Hence it is popularly said, I am going to write in my conclusion, that Aristotle's best state is Plato's second best state. Anyone? How do we address the question? How do we articulate points? How do we bring points? So many times what is the understanding what you're getting? Reading is only different, writing is only a different art. Reading is you're just reading linearly, but in writing you have to do a lot of thinking. So when you say I can't write fast, why you can't write fast? My pen is slow. Your pen is not slow. Your processor is slow. Why your processor is slow? Because you have not trained your processor to think that way. Your processor only switching on and switching off, just reading the books page after page. But your processor has never built interlinkages. your processor have never thought about, okay, what is the different aspect. So in exam, what they're doing, exam they're making the question more applied, which requires a person to think. That's why we say think before you ink. When you have not done any kind of thinking at preparation stage, when you go into an examination hall, when you have to write an answer, that's why I told why we are giving time and writing, putting pressure. Right? Same question, if I give you 2 hours time and write, you can think hell lot of time, day, then you can do. That is what we say, all that thinking should be done at preparation stage. Exam answer writing stage means all I have thought, all I have revised, now I am going to just go write. Why I can write? Because my thinking is already developed. So when I look at the question, obviously what will happen? Structure, easily addressing, okay, what is the exact thing they're asking, quickly generating points. Why that would have happened? Multiple revisions, solving multiple questions. Right? I have not just written notes, I have not just read notes. We would have also what? Done lot of thinking, lot of discussions, lot of things. So what happens tomorrow when they give one more question? Let us take same question now. They'll take Aristotle is one of the greatest Platonists. Answer remains the same. But here you are going to write ulta. That how Aristotle has come under influence of Plato. Second half of the answer you are going to write. But even though he is a follower of Plato, why he is the greatest? Because he's criticized Plato. He's brought and constructive criticism of many Plato's ideas. Right? And what makes him greatest? Because Plato has also accepted one of his ideas and he's modified his ideas in his later works. Answer remains the same. And now you are in a position to write this answer very quickly because already you have practiced this question. Same way, what you read in Plato. Simple, this whole exam, the entire UPSC exam is exactly what Plato said. You should have a good understanding of ideas, not of the matter. When you have a good understanding of ideas, no matter how the form changes in that regard, you know the fundamental aspect of the form. But in reality, how people are preparing, their people are material things. What is material things? Now let us think they give this question. Which book it is come? Where it is given? Think some book printed it. Okay, now I'll buy this book and I'll read. Go to the exam. Next year in the exam, they'll ask one more new question. Matter has changed. Form is same. Means Aristotle is one of the greatest Platonists, or Aristotle is the Peter who is defied his master. Question, my wording might be different, but the inner meaning of the question, both questions is same. So the answer also remains same, because now you are a person who is able to identify the idea, not just the matter. So that is what is required to write a very good answer in what? Exam. So exactly this question is basing on what? Relation between Aristotle and Plato. So you're understanding, UPSC can ask questions in different areas, different possible areas. Or they might also ask a question, compare and contrast Plato's idea of justice and Aristotle's idea of justice. Since you have already done Rawls' idea of justice and Plato's, is at least some kind of words or you can write. Okay, his idea of that fellow's idea of justice is based on moral philosophy. His idea of justice is more based on legal aspects. His idea of justice is metaphysical. This idea of justice is more practical. His idea of justice is what? Plato's idea of justice is based on functional specialization. But his idea of justice is not only based on functional specialization, he goes into more specific aspect, retributive, distributive, commutative. But in both ideas of justice, you find that the principle they believe that what? To build a meritocratic society. In both ideas of justice, they don't believe that what? Equality is a natural principle. Both believe in what? Treating equals equally, unequals unequally. Because both belong to a time period where the moral consciousness of the society was different or more traditional. It was not modern. Got the point? So the point I'm trying to say that you can't go on picking for everything else. If you know certain things, if you learn to analyze, it will become more spontaneous. It will become organic. It will be on the spot. So any doubt you have in this question of relation between Plato and Aristotle? This is one of the probable questions that can come in the exam. Let us take one more previous year question, which is on Aristotle. Okay, take this question. 2015, they asked it for 10 marks. Comment on Aristotle's conception of equality. Comment on Aristotle's conception of equality. 10 marks, and you have to write it in within 150 words. So what is the time you get? Time you get is 7 minutes, and your time will start now. Comment on Aristotle's conception of equality. Last 3 minutes. Last 60 seconds. Last 30 seconds. Time up. So now if you look at the question here, they ask you to comment on what? They ask you to comment on Aristotle's idea of or conception of equality. So the meaning of comment is not only what. I can also bring my analysis. But however, it's a 10 marker question. So one straight away I will write my introduction saying that what? Aristotle in his work Politics, his idea of equality is a more traditional idea of equality where he says, I would write treating equals equally and unequals unequally. Then I would say his idea of equality is reflected in his theories of slavery as well as citizenship, where in slavery he defended slavery in the name of saying that from the hour of birth some men are destined to rule and others to serve. Also, Aristotle's idea of equality, he did not consider men and women as equal. He considered women to be inferior to men. and he sidelined women from what? Participation in public affairs. So that will be sufficient for a 10 marker question to explain his conception of equality. So I won't go into the point saying is that he told revolution, in revolution, that's not his idea of equality, his concept of equality, that is what they're asking. So some people what they will tell revolution, inequality, there's no connection to it. Now I need to bring my opinion on his idea of equality. So I would say that Aristotle's understanding of equality or Aristotle's idea of equality is incompatible. It is incompatible with the modern idea of social justice, because the modern idea of social justice will not only require for us to what believe that inequality is natural, but it believes that what there should be a principle of equity. Secondly, I would also write in my answer saying that Aristotle is confusing with two things. He fails to differentiate as what Rousseau says, or Rousseau's ideas of natural inequalities as well as socially created inequalities. So his idea of equality does not include that. He believes all inequalities are natural. So his defense of slavery in the name of natural is incorrect because it has been socially created. So hence we can say that Aristotelian idea of equality is mainly aimed towards creating a meritocratic society. It does not, comprehend with the idea of modern day social justice. So this is what I am going to write in my answer when they asked the question. For example, this was a question I think they asked in 2016 or 2015. So this was a year in paper 1, I had scored 150. Did I mind? Why? Because I did not just write what is there in my notes. I also brought the analysis, because this is on beforehand preparation. Because when you read theories of equality, there is a concept, no? There is a chapter called as what? Equality. There you would have written what are the different ideas of equality. You have what is that? Complex equality given by the communitarians. You have the idea of equality of resources, Ronald Dworkin. You have the idea of capability, equality of capability, Amartya Sen. There are many ideas of equality. They are asking what is Aristotle's notion of equality. Aristotle is a traditional idea of equality. The reason why he had such an idea, because he belonged to an age or time period where the moral consciousness of the society at that point of time was not compatible of what we today believe. So how do we understand his idea of equality? Through his theories, what he has given on slavery, on citizenship. And what is the summary of that? Treating equals equally, unequals unequally. Means he told masters and slaves cannot be treated same. So I am going to criticize, saying that okay, this idea is not the thing. The modern idea of equality is different. His idea of equality is incompatible with social, because they are not asking what is Aristotle's idea. They are asking me to comment on his idea. So obviously when I need to comment, first I have to tell what is his idea. Then I will bring my analysis saying that okay, is this idea acceptable today? So that's why we say the way the political science as a subject is, it is like what we say a never-ending conversation among scholars. So how your answer should be, it is also like a conversation. So first part of my answer explaining what is his idea of equality. Second part of my answer is bringing my reflections on it. Whether I accept it, whether I don't accept it, what do I think about his idea. Simple question, they are not asking what is Aristotle. They are not asking explain Aristotle. They are asking what? Comment. Anything, comment, discuss, analyze, examine. What is overthinking? Overthinking is, sir, what if it was examined? What it was discussed? My answer remains same. Simple, what do you mean by examine? You give your answer, you will tell examine my answer. What do you mean by, I will tell what is right, what is wrong, what you could have written. Sir, discuss my answer. Okay, 2-3 people come, will discuss. This fellow has written this, what you would have written, what you would have written. Same thing, discuss means what? Discuss uniform civil code. Okay, what are the feminists telling? What are the multiculturalists telling? What are the liberals telling? Comment. He saw a movie yesterday. Comment on the movie. He won't sit and tell story of the movie. He will tell what he felt about the movie. He will tell whether the movie was good, movie was bad, where the movie was important. Same way, comment on Aristotle's equality. It doesn't mean he'll only sit and explain what Aristotle told. He'll also comment on it. So many things are very basic. Many things are what people will do overthinking, over specialization. Why over specialization? Today you live in an era of what we call as FOMO. FOMO means you want to be special because always you have to create something special is there. And more be practical. In that given 7 minutes and all, you can't sit and there think, is it analyze, it is comment, is it discuss? Let me see, time is flying by. Remember, that's what we say. Anytime you have to be an Aristotle, not be a Plato. Live in your ideal world. Be in a practical world. In an ideal world, you can tell I write the best answer. Real world, you can't write the best answer in given time. Anything, na? Car might tell, it will give you 25 kilometers range. That is in controlled conditions, not on road. Once that car comes onto road, its mileage will decline. Same way, even when you are saying that, you know, in 20 minutes, in 10 minutes, I'll write a miracle answer. Not possible. You have to write a practical answer. So that's what I told. That is why I don't agree with this concept of called as model answer. There is nothing called as model answer. There can be only a reference answer. Reference means what you can think. What people will do, model answer, they're only copying what is there. They're never developing their abilities to think. What do you mean by model answer? I look here, I don't know, I look at an answer. I don't know, I look at an answer. So when will you learn to think? Because your things will work out. If that model question, model answer, same question comes in the exam, you have a model answer, you can reproduce. Same question won't come in the exam. So obviously there is a question not like model answer. Question is about learning the ability for you to write an answer, and that is why there is no shortcut to success. You have to work, you have to develop, and thinking is always difficult. It's not so easy, but it should be something that should be groomed for a period of time. But what people are doing, people are just doing rote learning. What is rote learning? Just buy out some notes, go. That's what I told. Here the question was not what is Aristotle's equality, comment on Aristotle's equality. So first half of the answer I wrote about what is his idea of equality. Second half of my answer, I brought the argument saying that this idea of equality is incompatible with modern day idea of social justice. So modern day idea of social justice, Rawls' idea of justice, it involves affirmative action. In name of this, what again, defending a natural inequality, that is not acceptable today. If you want to write a creative point, even in today's time, we can say there are many sections of society who defends the Aristotelian argument that inequalities are natural, slavery in America, caste system in India, because these are all rooted in a traditional understanding of equality. So what was the traditional understanding of equality? From birth, some are determined to rule, some are born to be slaves. So rulers and slaves cannot be treated equally. Master and master should be treated equally. Slave and slave should be treated equally. Master and slave cannot be treated equally. But today we reject this idea of equality. Why? As Rousseau said, all inequalities are natural. Many inequalities are human created, socially created, and it can be changed, it can be transformed. So slavery was abolished in America. Caste system or untouchability laws were brought against it. You got the point? So that is what we say, you should not just have a theoretical understanding, you should also have a conceptual, practical understanding of what do we mean. So what will happen here, when this question came, many people, I'm telling this is in 2016 or 2015, at that point of time, what many people did, again see it is not there in the notes. Because if you read the general notes at that point of time, there was nothing called as Aristotle concept of equality. There was only Aristotle theory of slavery, Aristotle idea of citizenship. Game point. Now they would have added in the notes because the question has come. But I'm telling you, at the point of view when the question came, there was nothing in the notes called as Aristotle idea of equality. It is deductive. We have to deduce from what we have read. And that's what I told. What the point I'm doing, this kind of question will come next year also, this year also. So point is that not is what in my notes. So how I'm able to deduce what I have read and how am I to write effectively. So understand. So this is, see, all these questions have come in recent times. Aristotle conception of equality, Aristotle, what is that, modern day constitution. You are applying, what was the question they were asking in Aristotle in 1990s, 2000, Aristotle theory of slavery, Aristotle, what you can say, idea on, what is that, classification of constitution. But if you see the recent trend, what they're especially doing with Western political thought, they're making it more application based. It's that you should have read, but you also know how to apply. So one more question, what they had asked in 2017 was, they had given this quote, okay, that what? Inequality is the cause for revolution everywhere. Okay, and they had given Aristotle and asked comment or something, discuss. I think it is comment or yeah, I think it is discuss or comment. Yeah, comment. They had given in 2017 for 15 marks. So this was also one of the paper I had written in 2017. So when I wrote this question, because at that point of time I had not read Aristotle in detail or this theory of revolution, I didn't. First of all, it was not there in any this notes, material notes, but in one book it was, one fair idea was given. Fair idea means only a little bit there given. Aristotle's revolution, general cause, particular cause, that's it. That's the only idea I had. But anyway, I had taken up this question to attend. So even when I wrote initially my answer, because 2-3 questions it was there in this paper 1 part A, were all new questions. No idea. So this question what I had written, when I read the question, I thought let me not worry, was let me read the question correctly. So that inequality is cause for revolution everywhere. Aristotle is telling it. First what I did, introduce about Aristotle. Aristotle, father of political science. He's written this called as Politics. In this Politics, he has analyzed 158 constitutions. Aristotle is considered to be a political scientist. Why? Because he has studied the problems of these political systems. And I wrote, for Aristotle's central idea, what he gives, he analyzes the root cause of revolution. Simply I wrote, I didn't explain, I just wrote, he says about general causes, he also says about particular causes, but one cause what features everywhere according to him is inequality. That alone what I knew from a book. That is what there was there in that book, nothing that given else. But this question I have to write now, next. This will cover 1 page. Now I have to write at least 2 pages. My accumulated knowledge. So I said, now I explained. According to Aristotle, though equality is not a natural principle of human society, but all humans have the natural urge to be treated as equals. When they are not treated as equals, or there is increasing economic inequality, or there is lack of what? Political inclusion, this will be a recipe for what? People to rebel against the political system. That will be the root cause of what? Change or revolution. And then I wrote, this is what we see in human history. The American Revolution happened because of increasing unequal exchange between Britain and America. French Revolution happened because of there was inequality when it comes in terms of estates. Chinese Revolution, it happened because there was inequality in terms of classes. So throughout human history, when we see what Aristotle is saying is correct, any form of inequality is the cause of revolution everywhere. And then I wrote, it holds true even today in contemporary times. When I say because of growth of capitalism, inequality has increased across. The Oxfam report shows that 1% of the world own almost 70% of the global property. And this has led to various kind of social movements. I wrote, in America, Occupy Wall Street movement. In France, yellow vest protests. Hence, as Aristotle had advised, it is very important for the present day governments to gain legitimacy. They should create at least a sense of equality, or inequality should be kept in check. If inequality is not kept in check, that will be a founding reason for revolution. This idea Aristotle, these insights Aristotle gave ages back, and that is why Aristotle is considered as one of the greatest political scientists ever written in Western political thought. This is the exact answer what I had written in the exam. So till my scores came, I never knew like, okay, fine, is it going to work out, is it correct or wrong? Because 2-3 questions I had written like that. But again, you can say in that year I got again 151 in paper 1. Paper 2, I wrote more, standard from book because I had prepared a lot. But I got only 140. My idea was that paper 2 I'll get like 160, 170 because I had written very, very well, very, very well. Everything what I read, everything was prepared, etc., etc. So sometimes it can also happen that when everything is only prepared and read, maybe I'm just quoting facts rather than thinking, analyzing, and trying to write organically in the exam. So that's what I told. This is how we can approach this question, that how inequality is the cause of revolution everywhere, given by Aristotle. Summary of this question is what? Any form of inequality, be it political, social, economic, it leads to what? Revolution, people to rebel against the state. So you can give examples for it, how it is happening throughout human ages, how it has happened in contemporary times, what can be done in this regard. Understood? I gave a lot of examples. I remember I had given Syrian example of Bashar al-Assad. That is the Arab Spring. Okay, this is a question. It's not just theory-based question. It is a applied question. So this is a question where I can bring a lot of current examples in my answer to justify my argument, to justify my point. So you have any doubt or you feel any question in Aristotle, what you feel it is difficult to address or understand? Any question you have in mind which you find it you are not able to answer this question? So largely this is what is there in Aristotle's topic. This is a main recent question what have come. So these are the things that you'll have to know in Aristotle for you to write any effective answer. So if there is any question what you feel is you have found it difficult to answer, you can tell, we can discuss that particular question. Or we'll move on to the next scholar, that is what? Machiavelli. Any doubt here? So let us take Machiavelli. So before going to question, I have to know basic material or Machiavelli. So first I have to know what is the Machiavelli belongs to the period of what? Renaissance. Some also consider him as what? Son of Renaissance. Machiavelli has written important works, 2 important works. Prince, you can say Discourse. Right, in Prince he moves for monarchy, in Discourse he moves for republican form of government. Then the major ideas given by Machiavelli, or major themes what we read in Machiavelli, is one, Machiavelli's view of human nature. And what he says, humans are selfish, greedy, avaricious, fickle-minded. Okay, these are covered. This is how he describes human nature, a very pessimistic view of human nature. Then there is a logical connection. Why does he describe human nature? Because for him, a ruler should understand whom he is ruling over, what is their characteristics, and that is when you will know how to rule. Because the whole book Prince is about art of governance or art of ruling, statecraft. Statecraft means art of ruling. So here, based on this human nature, he says the prince, you have to be both lion and a fox. Lion symbolizes courage, fox symbolizes cunningness. So Machiavelli's description of prince it is largely based on power politics. Machiavelli is a person, unlike the Greeks in that regard, he disregarded ethics and morality. He's brought complete separation of ethics and morality. So here there is a quote of one of the scholar which you can take down, which is nice. Take down. Machiavelli freed Machiavelli freed political theory political theory from from the moral clutches brought by the Greek philosophers. Moral clutches brought by the Greek philosophers. So one more thing is that what you can say, his methods or his study is purely empirical, morely practical, power politics. Then the other thing you can also see with Machiavelli, key other aspect is that his methodology, what is there, he is more scientific, more practical, less normative. Normative means there is no values. So that is why you have one more person called as Ernst Cassirer. Ernst Cassirer. He's written this book called as The Myth of State. Myth of State, where he calls Machiavelli as the Galileo of politics. Because what Machiavelli is deeply influenced by Renaissance period, where he tried to view politics largely in scientific terms in that regard. So Galileo is what? A scientist. So that is why he is considered as what? Galileo of politics. And then you also have to know Machiavelli's view on religion and politics. So when you study his view on religion and politics, you would say that he laid down the foundation of the Western secularism. He separated the state and church, because for him church became a hindrance to the state's expansion, from the ruler to taking bold decisions. And he also believed that state at that point, or church at that point, was highly corrupt in that regard. So hence he rejected what we call as the two swords theory. Two swords theory that was prevalent in medieval times. Okay, two swords means Pope and King are two symbols of authority. He told there can be one symbol of authority, that is the king or the prince. Then he also advised the king or the prince to use religion, or we can say he gave the utilitarian perspective of religion. Means religion cannot control the state, but state can control the religion. So he asked the prince to be what? To appear religious, to participate in religious functions, to make public appearances, can use the church to control the people, because he believed that people are deeply religious and their God fearing. Since they are God fearing, you can make use of that to legitimize your rule. So that is what you can say, that why he says you should be cunning. Because how he sees politics in a very narrow terms, only in terms of what? Power politics. For him, power is supreme. Nothing should come in the way of getting power. So that is why he is completely sidelined ethics and morality. So that is why he gives the concept of dual morality. That is one set of moral standards for the prince, the other set of moral standards for the common people. Little common people should follow principle of morality. But king, what does he advise the prince? That whatever he does in the interest of the state will be considered correct. So that is why he says that there is nothing called as moral or immoral. Everything is amoral in terms of what the prince does. And what is his ultimate thing? So you can say he also is a transitional thinker. Means his time period is transitioning from medieval to modern. So he has some modern ideas, that he wanted the prince to maintain a modern army, or he wanted also to secularism is one more feature. His idea of politics is more practical. But yet it is Hobbes who is considered as the first modern thinker, because Hobbes explicitly writes about sovereignty. And that is why we say when Bodin was standing at the gates of modernity, it was Thomas Hobbes who first entered it. That will deal later when we do Hobbes. So one more thing. Now, these are major ideas what you read in Machiavelli. But what is the other things we can link Machiavelli with? So, Machiavelli can be linked, or Machiavelli can be related to behavioralism. Because to a certain extent, we can consider Machiavelli as a forerunner of behavioralism. Why? Because behavioralism is understanding humans, what they do in actual political conditions, making more politics scientific, explaining what it is rather than what ought to be. So if you look at Machiavelli, Machiavelli is one of the first person to make politics more scientific. Or we can also link Machiavelli as a forerunner of classical realism in international politics. Because the core ideas he told, power politics, he told about security dilemma, he spoke about more about what capture of our means are more important than the ends, etc., etc. Then we can also link Machiavelli as a forerunner of utilitarian philosophy. Maximum good for maximum number. We can also link Machiavelli with respect to laying down the foundations of what you can say modern states in terms of or Western secularism. So these are major ideas of Machiavelli which we can correlate, interrelate, and what is his contribution or etc. And there are, Machiavelli is always divided between those who criticize Machiavelli as what he is a preacher of evil. For openly advocating what? Immorality. But there are people who defend Machiavelli saying that end of the day Machiavelli is just criticized for saying the blatant truth. And they say that you might criticize Machiavelli, but there is a Machiavelli in everybody. So you can say it's a deeply divided figure. Or there are people like Sabine who criticize Machiavelli saying that he is narrowly dated and narrowly located. So basically in the notes it will be there, certain viewpoints that you will have to go through, so that who said what, one or two you need to by heart to include in the answer. So these are the things that I'll have to know regarding what, to write any question on Machiavelli, a basic understanding of Machiavelli. Now let us look into what questions they've asked in the exam and how do we address these questions. So take down one question as explain how Machiavelli's application of empirical method to human affairs, marks an important stage in the evolution of political science. And this they have asked for 20 marks. This question had appeared in 2014. So what they have told, explain how Machiavelli's application of empirical methods to human affairs marks an important stage in the evolution of political science. So how do we approach this question? What are the points we can generate here? Now let us think you have read all your notes. Now this is the question that has come in the exam. They're asking you to explain how Machiavelli's application of empirical method in human affairs marks an important stage in the evolution of political science. So obviously the question what they're asking is that Machiavelli studied or understood humans through use of scientific methods. Unlike Plato or Aristotle, he did not describe humans in metaphysical terms. His idea of human affairs was based on what he observed, the conditions in 16th century Italy. So he described humans as what? Fickle-minded, selfish, egoistic, cowards, avaricious. Now, why this marks an important stage in development of subject? So now his core concern was not describing what ought to be, it's more about describing what it is. So he's based his study on human psychology rather than philosophy. So the subject which till the Greeks or after Greeks, which was mainly dominated by normative studies, now started to shift towards more empirical basis. What is empirical basis? Based on observation. Even after Machiavelli, Hobbes, we can say, he also emphasized is what? Understanding politics in practical terms. He also described human affairs as what? Man as selfish, egoistic, materialistic. And you can say now this led to what? The development or understanding politics as a science, not just as ethics and morality. You can say later in 1940s with the rise of behavioralism, David Easton, where they now started emphasizing that what? that we need to study politics in a more scientific way by completely removing the role of values. So that is why Machiavelli is considered as one of the forerunners of what? Behavioral revolution in the field of political science, because he completely freed politics from morals, values. He made politics or understanding politics in terms of power. And that is why we say that Machiavelli plays a very critical role, or that comes at a critical juncture when we are seeing a shift in the study of political theory from what normative studies to more of empirical based studies. And hence, when Sabine criticizes Machiavelli of being narrowly dated and located, he is incorrect, because Machiavelli's ideas has shaped the evolution of behavioral revolution, scientific studies in the field of political science. So I'll end my answer with this logic. So to answer this question, it is not only possible for you to just based on Machiavelli, you need to have a deeper understanding of saying that they're asking you to explain how Machiavelli's application of M, because till that time, largely Plato, Aristotle to a certain extent, they largely start to understand politics in terms of what? Philosophical method. It was Machiavelli the first who made it more empirical. Empirical means observation based, practical, sidelining the role of values. So they're asking that marks an important stage. Why it is an important stage? We are seeing a transition in how the subject is evolving. And that is why we can say initially in ancient period, it was largely philosophy that was dominant way of studying politics. But thereafter you can say the emergence of science. So he stands one of the forefront of developing scientific studies in politics. So in one more year, they've asked the same question. They've asked Machiavelli as the forerunner of behavioralism, comment. Answer is same. I can use this statement. Machiavelli's application of what? Empirical methods in human affairs marks a very important stage in development of political science. I'll use this as a conclusion in my Machiavelli as forerunner of behavioralism. In this question, I'll use my conclusion as what? This marks Machiavelli as what? Forerunner of behavioral revolution in the field of political science. You're getting an idea. So if you look at all the three questions, Plato, Machiavelli, Aristotle, in recent years, what they're making, they're not asking like before. Some questions, some years they've asked, write out Machiavelli's view on religion and politics. But some year also they're making the question bit more application based, bit more interlinked. So here the interlink is between what? Behavioral revolution and Machiavelli. So how Machiavelli's methodology marks the development of scientific studies in field of politics, understanding politics in more practical terms. So that you need to explain your answer, that why it is an important stage. So largely comes in 16th century. Getting the point? So that's why I told, it's not, again coming back to point, it's not only based on the notes what you have read, it's also based on how you have understood, how you have interlinked the core ideas. That is what they're asking in the exam also. They're giving a lot of what? Interlinking of concepts. Interlinking. So same thing, in one more year what they asked, Machiavelli is the forerunner of behavioralism. So how I will write my answer here? First I will write what is behavioralism, when did behavioralism arise, and I will say that when we look back, the sentence I will add, Machiavelli's application of empirical methods to study of human affairs marks an important stage in the evolution of political science. So how Machiavelli has sowed the seeds of behavioralism, because he separated ethics and politics. He focused on how people actually behave in a given situation rather than what ought to be. He saw politics in more practical terms. Hence, many consider him as what? Forerunner of behavioralism. They are asked for 10 marks. So you can say these ideas have been carried forward by subsequent scholars and later developed and evolved into more comprehensive, structured way by David Easton. Again, mind. So it's not about always looking into, where in notes, in my notes it is there. They are making it more what? applied. They're making more what? Understanding based. It is made looking, they want the student to produce the answer. It is, they don't want the student to copy from some book and write. Get I want? So the answer for this question and the answer for the question where you write about Machiavelli as forerunner of behavioralism, answer remains the same. Here largely what you are emphasizing on Machiavelli's empirical method of understanding politics, and there you are explaining why it marks an important stage. So if you are total previous stage how it was, basically you have to write about Plato, Aristotle and the Greeks, how they largely viewed politics in ethical terms, moral terms. Their values were closely tied with politics. Understood that how do you approach this question? One more question on Machiavelli, can take down. Okay, take down. Discuss the importance of Machiavelli. Discuss the importance of Machiavelli in the history of political thought. Discuss the importance of Machiavelli. Discuss the importance of Machiavelli in the history of political thought. In the history of political thought. Full stop. Is it correct? Is it correct? Is it correct to say Machiavelli's theory is narrowly dated and located. Narrowly dated and located. So this you can take for 20 marks. So first try to generate what points you can think about it. So what Anshal had told for the previous question, sir, structure can be that after intro we can explain his empirical notion, that how this led to evolution of political science, then the limitations, then conclusions. 100% you can write that way. Yeah, tell me what will be your approach of answering this particular question. First, they're asking you to discuss his importance. What is his importance? So I don't need to write all his theories. I have to tell why is he important. So what is his importance? See, introduction, I don't forget, you have a standard introduction. What is it? Machiavelli is one of what we consider as the greatest practical political thinkers ever seen in the Western political thought. He has written his book called as what? The Prince. What is his importance? Okay. So one you can say he broke from the past where he made the evolution or emergence of scientific study in politics. Then same thing, separated politics and ethics, 1 point. Then examination. Okay, you can say that he brought the approach of understanding politics in terms of power. He made power central to understanding politics. Then, so he laid down the foundations of Western secularism. Then, so you can say his ideas have also shaped the emergence of classical realism in international politics. Then any other significance of Machiavelli or importance of Machiavelli? So you can say for him the basis of state was for human needs rather than being it natural. Enough, these are you can say important. Now next they are asking what is it correct to say Is he narrowly dated? Okay. So you can tell Sabine was the person who criticized Machiavelli. That first you have to tell he is narrowly dated and narrowly located. Why? Because according to Sabine, his ideas have been largely influenced by what? Influenced by the conditions of his times. So he says that if Machiavelli was born in a different era, his ideas would have been different. Second one, what is his one more criticism is that, so mainly he belonged to a time period of Renaissance. That is why many of his writings reflects the thinking of those times. Or you can say many of Machiavelli's ideas are not applicable in today's time or in a different. So you can say to a certain extent you can agree with that, but you cannot tell all Machiavelli's ideas are not located because some of his ideas are transcendental, means they are across time. So one point what you can write for your argument is that many of these ideas were not just in 16th century, they have been also there much before. For example, Kautilya in his book Arthashastra has also reflected similar ideas. Then second one, you can say secularism or what Machiavelli spoke about, it is part of today, modern day constitutions. In West, we see that there is separation of state and the church. His ideas, what he told about scientific study of politics in that regard, or how he analyzed humans, or actual how humans behave in politics, that has evolved into a new development in the field of political science. That is what behavioralism. That is why he is also considered as what forerunner of behavioralism. And when we look at today's international relations in that regard, you can say it still works in the framework of what? That trust deficit, or you can say there is no role for ethics when it comes to international relations or international politics. So hence, we can say Sabine has been too critical of Machiavelli, and that is what we say, though many criticize Machiavelli as what? An advocate of evil, but yet we can say that Machiavelli is one of the most practiced thinkers in actual contemporary politics. Or I can give other examples, right? If you look at Indian politics in that regard, when I look at Indian politics, I can see here what is there. Same thing, politics in India is all about power. So coalitions are formed for survival, for power. Coalitions are not just based on ideologies. So hence we can say Machiavelli is not just narrowly dated or narrowly located. Certain truths Machiavelli has spoken about, that is transcendental. So again, it's not a difficult question, it's an easy question, but more also how do I structure my answer? How do I arrange my points? Got it? Any doubt? How do we approach it? That is what you need to read. So first you have to tell Sabine's point of view, why he is feeling that he is narrowly dated or located. Yeah, some ideas of his are not applied in today's sense. Because today we live in globalization era. So we cannot tell that everything happens on that. Even today we have something called as international human rights. That values are part of even international politics in that regard. Getting the point? But you can write. But yeah, but more importantly, my argument is that his ideas are transcendental. Sabine is too critical in his understanding of Machiavelli. So if you see most of the questions, it's easy to write, but it's all about how do we approach to write? How do we understand the concept? How we have interlinked the concept? So that's why I told when you prepare, always you also have to prepare based on previous year questions, how they've asked. So that will give an understanding of interlink. So this is about what Machiavelli, Aristotle, as well as Plato. So other questions I have not taken about Machiavelli because they are more straightforward. So Machiavelli's view on religion and politics, or Machiavelli's view on ethics and politics. It's straightforward what you have in your notes that can be reproduced. So I have only taken up those kind of questions which are more, what you can say, applied, which are more maybe difficult to answer. So in the next class, we'll be going through the other three scholars, that will be Hobbes, Locke, and J.S. Mill, and bit of Bentham, because Bentham will need in between. So again, we'll have to look into what questions have been come and how we can interlink Locke, because Locke we can link to rights, Locke we can link to democracy, J.S. Mill we can link somewhere else. Marx and Gramsci. So tomorrow we'll be taking 3 more scholars or 4 more scholars, because again because here we're not completely doing it, we are mainly going through question based approach. And yeah, for the online students, any doubt? Relationship between neighbors, trust deficit leading to balance of power, yeah, secularism, that you can write. Forerunner of behaviorism, warfare technology, narrow-related aim to unite Italy, stop influence of the church, highly relevant. Yes, you can write. Yes, Anchal, that is correct. For the online students, this will be, yeah, this is the last open session. From tomorrow, it is not going to be an open session. It will be only available on the portal. So I hope you are able to understand how to approach the question here. Tomorrow we'll take up other questions. Got it. Yeah, tomorrow we'll take up Locke, what is that, Hobbes, Mill, and Bentham, and if possible even Karl Marx. So by tomorrow we'll look to complete the 3 other thinkers. Then maybe we'll be left with only Hannah Arendt and J.S. Mill. Yeah, the notes is uploaded on the portal. It will be on the portal, the value addition notes.